Welcome to the shop, Steve here at SKS Props, and in my previous video I made this awesome sword from Raya and the Last Dragon. Now while I was building this particular one, I knew in the back of my mind that I always wanted the sword to also become her sword whip, and I thought, why not make it so the hilt is detachable from the blade? That way I only have to make this extremely detailed hilt once, and I can just pop this off and pop on the other one for awesome cosplay photos or for reference. So with this particular blade, it pops off, it has a coupler and a PVC pipe, and in this video, I made the whip that goes along with it. And it just slips right into the hilt, just like the blade does. But the thing that's awesome about this is that you could have a friend off camera that holds it, so you can have a unique perspective, or if you have another cosplay friend that's dressed up, you could wrap this around their weapon or body and have it part of the shot. So just like the blade, the whip is made out of my HD foam, which you can find over at Blick Art Materials. And I want to continue to thank everyone that's been supporting me by purchasing HD foam from Blick, especially those that go through the links that are in the description section and those that are on my website, because I do receive a small vendor affiliate, which allows me to continue to build awesome things like this and show you how to do it. So I want to show you what it takes to put this whip sword together, so let's go ahead and get started. Just like the first blade, I started off by printing and cutting out the template that I created in Photoshop. You, of course, can find a link for this over in the description section. It's a free download on my website. Now, since this blade doesn't need the stability of the rod in the middle, it's going to be assembled a little bit different. I start off with two rectangular pieces of 10mm HD foam. These are going to be glued together using some 3M90 spray adhesive. The spray adhesive is generously applied to both halves, and I use a hairdryer to help speed up the dry process. Once tacky, the two foam pieces can be firmly pressed together, and I use a PVC pipe as a rolling pin. I use two straight pins to affix the template to the stacked foam, and I trace around this with a pencil. Using my bandsaw, I carefully follow the line that I had previously drawn until the entire blade is cut out. And once again, if you don't have a bandsaw, you can still do this process with a utility knife. Now I'm going to make the first segmented piece that will house the PVC pipe that will attach to the hilt. Just like the main blade, I use spray adhesive to attach two pieces of 10mm foam together. The template for this is traced onto the foam, and I draw lines to square it out because I need the base of this to be flat so I can drill into it later on. So I start by cutting off the bottom and the sides, and then I mark the middle of it with a PVC pipe. I then can line up this piece with my Forstner bit on my drill press so I can drill this out so it's the right diameter for the PVC pipe. Now that the hole has been drilled out, I can cut away the top and the bottom pieces. I once again use a compass to map the bevels on either side of the blade. This helps me get perfect distancing from the outside to the middle. A medium grit sanding drum is used to remove the material from the line that I had drawn down to where the two foam pieces are glued together. This makes sure that I get a uniform bevel all the way down the blade. After the majority of the foam had been removed with a coarse sanding drum, I can then go in with a smooth sanding drum and smooth everything out. And if you're new to foam smithing, having a smooth sanding drum or a stone bit really makes a difference on your final pass. Before I use glue, I insert the PVC pipe down into the hilt, and I test fit this first segment on top. Now I can use some Bob Smith superglue to adhere the foam to the PVC pipe to make sure that I have a perfect fit. I use a sharpened pencil to poke through the paper to follow the segments that I created on the template. This will make sure that all of them line up exactly as they do in the movie. After all the lines have been laid out, I can then trace over them with a pencil. To make the center detail, I'm once again going to be using the HD foam 10mm triangle dowels. These dowels can be glued into place using some superglue and follow the contour of the blade all the way down to the tip. Small sections of the dowel are also applied to the piece that contain the PVC pipe. And here you can see, just like the blade, this section fits flush with the guard. Using my bandsaw, I cut the blade into the segments that I had drawn onto it. Now because of the 10mm triangle dowel on the bottom, it doesn't sit flat, so I have scrap pieces of 10mm foam taped underneath to keep the piece level. Now this process is a little tedious, but I just work back and forth on either side until I have all the segmented pieces cut out. So I don't get the pieces out of order, I take this opportunity to mark them numerically. Now I can take my smooth sanding drum and refine all these pieces. That includes refining the dowels and then all of the cuts that I had made on the individual segments. Just like I had done on the blade, I take some super glue and apply it to the tip and spread it all over the surface. This will harden and make sure to protect it. I lay out all the individual segments and now I can start priming and painting, and to do that I'm going to be once again using Creature Cast. The semi-rigid is thin, so I'm going to be using Neothix to thicken it up. I'm going to be using a chip brush to apply my Creature Cast, but you can also use it through an airbrush or a critter gun. I brush the Creature Cast directly onto the foam pieces. Any additional material that has built up or that needs to be smoothed out, I do that with an upholstery foam piece. Like Mod Podge and Flex Bond, Creature Cast is a non-toxic alternative. It is a neoprene rubber, so it is very strong. It's actually stronger than Plasti Dip, but you don't have to worry about its toxicity or having to spray it in warmer weather. And as I had mentioned before, it dries about as quickly as acrylic paints, or you could speed up that dry time with a hairdryer. Now to simulate the texture that I had given to the previous blade, after this first layer has dried, I then go back in with my chip brush and apply a stippled second layer. Rust-Oleum Antique Pewter is then sprayed onto all the individual foam pieces to act as my base layer for the metallics. After the silver had dried, Montana brand gold was then lightly sprayed just to break up the color. Now some more concept art has been released since I did the original blade, and it looks like it might be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to be painting this blade as an alternative painting method that you could also apply to the original. Now to keep the blade shine and patina, I'm going to be using Liquitex brand Cobalt Teal and Iridescent Rich Silver. These colors are going to be mixed together and applied by hand with a filbert brush directly over the metallic spray paint. For the patina, I'm just trying to keep more of the teal in the recesses. To simulate the cord stringing all of these individual pieces together, I'm going to be cutting up old useless AC adapter lines and gluing those into place. Now I've got a bulk salvage place not far from my house where I picked up a whole box of different adapters and cords that I used in this build and in my Warhammer 40k Tech Priest. But if you don't have one of those stores around, I'm sure you've got some old useless AC adapters that you aren't using anymore. On either side of the 10mm foam triangle dowel, I drill out the foam just deep enough for about a 1/4 inch of the line to be inserted. Like most of the details I do on foam, these lines are also glued into place using some Bob Smith super glue. Now this process took a while. The biggest thing that I kept having to check was to make sure that all my pieces were still in numerical order. Now as you can see here, another reason why I wanted to use these AC adapter lines is that the copper in the line gives it a little bit of rigidity, but it still makes it flexible. Now I cut the AC lines to about 3 inches in length, but if you wanted to shorten or extend the whip, you could change that number. What I really love about this build is by keeping the hilt and swapping the blade for the whip, this becomes a multifunctional prop that definitely gives cosplayers the ability to have cool perspectives and action shots. And most importantly, all without having to make a completely new prop weapon. Once the final section had been glued on, the sword whip was ready for pictures.
So you all can see the steps that I took to not only build Raya's blade, but also her sword whip. And hopefully you're enjoying these videos and learning from them, because even if you're not building this particular blade, it's multifunctional props like this that really can add to your cosplay photo shoots. Now if you are enjoying these videos, give them a thumbs up, share them with your friends and family, and until next time, build your best with the best. HD Foam.